On today's show, Volume 1 of Stock Up, Stock Down, and Holding. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Gametime, promo code LOCKEDONNBA. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. As always, we are produced by the one and only Jake Stevens, and this is your team every day. If we're on your Spotify Wrapped, by the way, shoot us an email, shoot us a tweet, and we'll shout you out on a show later this week. I've got a couple texts from friends, but get some listeners out there. Hit us with us on your Spotify Wrapped. Before we get into today's show, going to do two things. Number one, Evan is going to give us any updates pertinent from practice on Monday. Evan, any news, any injury updates, anything of note coming from Monday's Cavs practice?
No, nothing really of note that came from practice, other than the fact that Dean Wade was able to practice. Karis LeVert was not. I asked Bickerstaff now that they're at the quarter point of the season, and the Cavs have this rare opportunity to have 2 days off to practice, rest, and recover. He said like they are focusing on a lot of the issues and smaller things they can fix and adjust, like kind of not on the fly, but is going to take like weeks and weeks to fix because they just have that time so they can do that. And the interesting thing I learned is Max Strus won an Emmy in November. So he shared that with us this afternoon.
Good for Max Strus.
Yeah, they did. The Miami Heat did a documentary on his life and the association based in that region. They won an Emmy for it. So he joked saying he wonders if Miami will roll out the red carpet or do an award show for him when they go to Miami later this week.
This makes he had an Instagram caption the other day that was like the paparazzi been busy lately, which maybe like plays into that bit a little bit, but good for Max Strus. All right, here's the second thing we're going to do before we really dive in. Here's the way this show is going to be structured. We're going to try to do this every week. From now on, reoccurring bit. You can send interjections as well, but give us a little something to plant our flag on every week here. It's not a new bit. Other shows do this, but it's a good bit, so we're going to do it. Segment 1, we're going to do Stock Up. So we're going to just each riff on something and talk about something with each other that we're higher on, that we're seeing on an upward trend right now. Segment 2, Stock Down. So the opposite. And segment 3, something we're holding. It's like when you have a stock and you're saying, I'm going to hold this because I want more information before I make a decision one way or the other. Or
for the GameStop bros, diamond hands, and all that jazz, to the moon, whatever terminology. I bought AMC stock for a little bit, and then I'm like, yeah, this is dumb, and I sold it.
It's super dumb. Just get a brokerage account. All you losers out there doing that, get a brokerage account like an adult.
You tell him, Chris.
Some news, brother.
Hashtag let him know.
I will let him know about the importance of brokerage accounts. The best part of Miss Marvel was Mr. Khan talking about sound financial investing, and I was like, that's my guy. All right, Stock Up, Evan. What's your Stock Up?
Stock Up for me is Max Strus. I talk about this a lot on the show, but I just think the fact that he has been somewhat of a seamless fit, hand in glove at times, just in terms of the pure shooting and scoring aspect, has been huge for Cleveland. More than that, it's just been also the just like the playmaking, the offensive rebounding, the second chance opportunities that he provides the Cavs, and just more impressively, like just how he kind of impacts winning for the Cavs and kind of sets the tempo and demeanor on the floor for them.
I think this is a good answer overall. I think that this is an answer that is a good season-long answer, right? Like, I think this is someone who has expanded the playbook, who has given them a skill set they didn't have. I think this is the right season-long answer. I think if you're looking at the course of the season, I don't think there's anyone else on the team that has felt as positive universally in terms of no issues with their play, right? Like there's a lot of niche you could pick with, I think, just about everybody else, for a variety of reasons. Strus is weirdly the one guy where even if it's not monster nights every night and all of that, he is the one that I think has just been the most even. He has been the most kind of steady amid all of the other junk going on with this team right now.
Yeah, I think steady and junk going on with this team is a good way to put it. Just the fact that like you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like even if his shot isn't falling, he is finding a way to be impactful on the floor for the Cavs. And I think the playmaking aspect's been really interesting. I think him building that encore rapport with Evan Mobley, like during the summer, like he texted the Cavs telling him to clip a bunch of clips of him and Bam Adebayo together in Miami to kind of give Mobley something to digest, to like figure out how to work with the big that has this playmaking chops, but having a movement shooter alongside him just to kind of figure out like, okay, he likes the ball in this certain spot, just to kind of execute a pretty effective play. And then vice versa, like Strus has really showed a lot of chops as a playmaker and a ball handler as well. And I think like you see that closing line at the Cavs sometimes run of Mitchell, Garland, Strus, LeVert, and one of either Mobley or Allen. Like that lineup can be lethal because you have 4 ball handlers and a very dominant defensive big man. And if you have Mobley, like there's that playmaking and just like stretchiness that he can provide too at times, is stepping out a bit more on the perimeter lately.
Other thing that he's been great at this year, rebounding, career high 5.5 boards, mostly on the defensive end, but has had some monster rebounding games. They've, I think, really allowed him to crash the glass and be that kind of player. For the year, career high in points, career high in rebounds, career high in assists, career best effective field goal percentage, and second best mark of his career from 3. Okay, mine is, I'm going to go more recent. I'm just going to go more short-term based on the game we just saw in Detroit. And my stock up is Isaac Okoro. Just the guy I think they need. I think when they're fully healthy, he should play ahead of Dean Wade. I think there's going to be games where he can get 30 minutes a night and make an impact. I think the defense, I think the toughness, I think the grit, I think the shooting has been good enough, even if you'd like him to maybe take a little bit more. He's down from where he was last year. But I think this is just a tough, hard-nosed two-way player. I think the way he plays is just something they can't really get from anybody else, and the Pistons game is, I think, his best game of the year. And he's also someone that if you're looking at, do they try to make some other kind of trade? He's the name Michael Scotto from Hoopside did this column where he shouted out the most likely player trade on every team. Okoro was his answer for Cleveland. That wasn't like grounded in sources say Okoro's on the block or whatever, but it's logical and there's something riding on him one way or the other. But I like the way he's playing right now. My answer for stock up, Isaac Okoro.
Great pick. I think, like you said, like nothing's set in stone in him being traded, but it certainly is worth watching if, let's say, like the contract extension stuff is put on hold, or at least a rookie extension is on hold for now. He may be next year, but
which it is the deadline. Yeah, he's got to wait till RFA now.
Yeah, the deadlines come and go, but like the Cavs could sign him on day one of restricted free agency and make sure like he doesn't test the market. But the Cavs could let him do that. But with how well he's playing in terms of his two-way impact, he could price himself out of what the Cavs may be comfortable paying him, or maybe the Cavs kind of want to put the check up for, just because they have to be mindful of the certain aprons when it comes to being a luxury tax team. So yeah, he could be a trade target, but I think you're right. Like he has been probably the most impactful defender on the floor for Cleveland, other than maybe Evan Mobley, just because he is able to defend in space, but he's also comfortable defending 1 through 4, maybe even 5s at times too, just depending on the matchup or things like that. And I asked JB Bickerstaff about this because Jared Allen said after the Pistons game that Isaac is kind of underrated, maybe even underappreciated in terms of just what he brings to the floor. And Bickerstaff said, like, yeah, that is a pretty consistent sentiment because he doesn't like put up the flashiest stats or anything like that. But like internally, they know like Isaac is a guy who busts his butt on defense for them and also will try on offense, even if it's just making the right pass, the right read, instead of maybe taking the open shot, because he's just hardwired to win. And I think Bickerstaff kind of alluded like he does have like a bit of that Lamar Stevens mold to him, where like he scraps and plays his butt off on defense, and it's so endearing to his teammates that they want to try harder because this guy is just busting his butt out on the court. So I think that's a great pick.
It's also just the most on-brand pick I could possibly do.
Yeah, it is. I'm interested to hear about your downs or what you're down on. So this will be fun.
We will do mine first. This is the one out of the 3. I will tease this way. It involves one of the team's three most important players. It's one of those three players, and it's the one of these that I feel the strongest about. We'll talk about that after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can score this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. They have a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And they have all kinds of NBA in-season tournament stuff, if that is your jam as well. And they'll have Cavs Magic odds soon as well. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Kick off the NFL season. Tap into this NFL season. And that's FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the official sportsbook of Locked On. All right, we are back here on Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. All right, mine is Evan Mobley as an offensive player. This is my stock down. He has just been flat out disappointing this year on offense. I think particularly coming off that Pistons game, Evan, I was very underwhelmed by him in that game. For him to take 5 shots in a game just isn't good enough. That's not all on him, but it doesn't help. And then his best moment of offense in that game, he's being guarded by Bojan Bogdanovic at the elbow. He has a nice spin. The handle's tight. He gets by him, and he gets blocked by Jalen Duren at the rim. Mobley just doesn't have an offensive easy button. He doesn't have something that has allowed him to just get easy buckets over and over again. I think he's hesitant in the short roll more than he should be. And you look at the numbers, he's just not progressing. Yes, the assist percentage is higher. Well, his turnover percentage is now at a career worst right now. You look at his shooting accuracy, you look at just his overall just kind of raw counting stats, like nothing has progressed. And then how he plays has not progressed. And I think with it being year 3 and all of the expectations for him, and I've been very high on him the whole time. There's no denying that. I think there's a bigger episode to do about this, but the fact that it doesn't feel like he has progressed in a major way, it doesn't feel like he's added anything in a major way, and it kind of feels like he's a very limited offensive player in the current way he looks. It's just disappointing. And I think for me, what his ceiling is as an offensive player is my stock down in volume 1 here.
I think I said ooh when you said that, just because I'm like, oh, that's an interesting take. But you laid out a pretty rock solid argument. Like, I think the biggest thing, like, for him is, yeah, the assist percentages are up, but like, he is very guard dependent on getting the right looks, whether that's at the basket or on the perimeter. Like, there aren't moments where you see Evan Mobley, like, yeah, he'll bring the ball up in transition and he'll bring it up across the timeline, but he'll pass it to a guard right away. And I'm sure people say, like, oh, he's hardwired that way and that's how he's supposed to be. But yeah, he's been very flat offensively. I think him kind of stretching out his range and taking 3-pointers and making them is kind of fun, but you need to see more of that. I just want to see a little bit more diversity other than like looks at the basket. And sure, he's becoming a little bit more consistent at the free throw line compared to last year or his rookie season. But if I were the Cavs, this is the guy I take who is likely going to be the franchise cornerstone, but isn't like quite taking that 3rd-year leap. Is that a product of the coaching staff? Is that a product of the development plan that you put in place for Mobley? Like, what is going wrong here? Because like, I know the Raptors aren't great, but like, you watch what Scotty Barnes does in terms of just like ball handling and just watching the coaching staff in Toronto empower him to be a little bit of that creator for Toronto on offense and kind of force him to be a point forward. Like, I was hoping the Cavs would maybe explore more of that and really get Garland and Mitchell comfortable playing off ball and just really form an offense that is heliocentric based off cutting and movement. But like, Mobley is the fulcrum of it all because he does have the vision and the passing touch, but the handle isn't tighter. And like you said, he is hesitant to take shots sometimes, and that can be frustrating, especially in that Pistons game where he hardly took any.
And I think it's not even just hesitancy of shots. It's hesitancy to pass at times. It's hesitancy to make a decision. When he gets the ball, particularly in the short roll, when he's being asked to make a decision, it's oftentimes pausing for a second or 2 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot. But when you pause for just that little bit, you're giving the defense time to react. You're taking away reads. It tells us that you're not super confident in those spaces right now. there's things that he has added that I've liked of late. I think the spin out of the with the Bojan thing is great. I think him and Allen has added some really nice 2-man game chemistry, big to big of late, that has been really fun and really effective at times. But there's the numbers, the way it feels, it just doesn't feel like he has taken a step forward. And I think for me, that changes how I feel about what his ceiling is. It still means he's going to be a really good player, but there's not been the breakthrough. And look, when you have Donovan Mitchell and Darius on your team and you don't get to make mistakes because you're winning, I think there's a cost to that. And maybe that's part of this, but again, that's a bigger Mobley conversation I think we should have probably next week or so. Evan, what's your stock down?
My stock down is Darius Garland as a ball handler right now. He is second in the NBA last I checked in terms of turnover percentage. Like more often, I think it's like 39% of the time he is turning over the ball per 100 possessions. Like that's not great if that's what your point guard. Second worst average in terms of assists per game because he's just turning the ball over so much. And I think it's just become very isolation heavy for Cleveland. But Garland just kind of feels a little bit lackadaisical at times too. Like he doesn't feel like he's fully engaged on what the Cavs are trying to do on offense. And like, it feels like he's coasting. Whereas he'll say like, oh, we need to step on the neck of an opponent and make sure that like they don't have any room to get back into a game. But like he hasn't backed up what he's been saying because like he has looked kind of like he's floating through the offense sometimes. And we talked about this on Monday's show, but like it's that weird connection between him and Mitchell that just like feels like it's severed compared to where it was at the start of last year. And they're trying to refine it, but like Garland just kind of seems like he's going through the motions sometimes, and he'll flip a switch, sure, but the turnovers and just like the lack of creation for others is pretty concerning for a guy you want to consider your franchise point guard.
It's not been a great Darius Garland year. I think this is another great shot. I think Garland has had moments where you're like, oh, he's doing something awesome. There's games where he is. I have made the case he has been the most important guy, but you just look at the numbers. 19.3 points, down to 5.9 assists, down from 7.8 a year ago and 8.6 2 years ago, 4.3 turnovers this year, which would be a career worst number. It's not been a careful Darius Garland season. Just down, his 3-point rate is down as well, and he's shooting 33% from three. Like this has been a pretty underwhelming Darius Garland year. He still has moments where he's awesome. You know, the injury I don't think helped. If there's just whatever is going on with this team overall, I think he is. Some of the answers come from him just figuring out himself a little bit, but it's not been good. And Evan, I think the part that gets at me the most with him is that it's felt more careless than I've ever felt like he's played.
I think, yeah, like that's a good way to put it. Like I was saying, he was going through the motions at times. It feels like he's not like, I don't know. It seems like people are body language policing him or doctoring him, saying like, oh, he's checking out mentally, like he wants to change, like he's sick of playing with Donovan or playing for JB or whatever. But like, yeah, it's just like that killer instinct or that edge that Garland usually plays with. It's been lacking this year. And like, it feels like, yeah, maybe he's trying to be a little patient and let the offense come to him. And there are moments, like you said, where like he can flip the switch and pop, but it's frustrating because after that year 3 leap that he had, and that made him an all-star and everything, and then like he gets paid like a franchise guard, and then last year was phenomenal next to Donovan Mitchell. Like there's just like a lack of continuity from the last 2 years to now that just like isn't there. And it feels like, I'm not saying he's regressed. It just feels like he doesn't care either. Like it just feels like he's going through the motions, or maybe he's waiting for something to change or something to click. And I just don't, I can't fully diagnose it, because if you ask him about it, he'll either get defensive or just deflect, saying like, oh yeah, we'll figure it out next time. Because I like Jackson Flickinger asked him about the turnovers he's been dealing with lately, and like he took exception to that, saying like, well, I like being aggressive. That means I'm just being aggressive with the ball in my hands and trying to get everybody else involved. But the problem is you're not getting everyone else involved because you're averaging almost a career low in assists. So something's got to give here. And I'm wondering if it's an internal thing, or like maybe he's physically still not 100% or something, but there's something going on behind the scenes that maybe we're not fully aware of, because yeah, I'm just like, it just doesn't add up, because this isn't the same Darius Garland I'm used to like watching on a nightly basis.
Yeah, look, I think whatever anyone says in these like communal scrums, press conferences, whatever it is, like when they're talking to the media as a whole, regardless of, I think who's asked to ask the question, regardless of like, you're never going to get fully satisfactory answers. I think if you just look at the play, that is the more compelling story. He can,
the eye test tells.
The eye test tells Basketball Reference like tells like there's a lot there that is just off. And I would guarantee you that there's that conversation internally.
And I'm sure the conversation is being had. And if you asked like any of his coaches or just any of his teammates or anything, no one's going to throw him under the bus. Like that's the worst thing you want to do in this situation. But yeah, I'm sure it's something they're talking about internally just because, yeah, it just doesn't feel like he's very engaged. Like the Cavs are just very much out of sync offensively. I said this on Monday's show, but it feels like this is what I expected from Garland and Mitchell to start last season. And weirdly enough, with a year under their belt, they now feel completely out of sync on offense.
All right, coming up next, holding. What are we saying we need more information on before we feel up or down? What's up next? Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, which means you're going to take all the guesswork out of buying tickets on Gametime. Love the last-minute deals. I built a trip in New York around getting last-minute deals to Liberty Aces. I'll be going back to New York in March. And we'll be doing the same for some things I'm going to go to there. And plus, the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Download Gametime today. All right, last segment. Evan, what are you waiting for more information on?
Donovan Mitchell's scoring acumen. Is it the hamstring? Is it just any of the aches and pains he's been dealing with to start the year? But he has showcased the ability to go off. He scores 40 points in a game, and the Cavs need every single point to win not too long ago. But then there's like nights where you can tell like there's something a little bit off with his scoring acumen because he's like 8 to 20, 8 to 26 or something like that from the floor. Like he still gets his 20 points, but it takes a lot of work to get there. And I think that's going to be part of the case with Mitchell. Like you're going to get a lot of shot attempts with him just because that's how he's wired as a player and how the Cavs are wired offensively. But I think we're going to see him scoring a little bit more, and maybe he becomes a lot more efficient in those scoring opportunities too. As he starts to get healthier, and maybe as the Cavs kind of start to find their quote unquote groove as they enter the second quarter portion of their season.
He is just kind of a real point of interest to me right now. Because what he gives this quote after.
I'm just curious because there's a lot of way to be interested in.
The way the team I think responds to him now is just kind of interesting because like last year I felt like at times he was really galvanizing, and it doesn't quite feel the same this year. Like what he said after the Blazers loss, it didn't feel like that necessarily like drove anything. His numbers are like pretty close to last year's, averaging more assists, which makes sense with the Garland injury. His 3-point percentage is down. His volume's a little bit down. Shooting a little bit more overall by like half a shot a game. He's just having like another like pretty good season, but it doesn't quite feel as ascendant as last year, if that makes sense. Like that's kind of where I've ended with him. And
it's empty calories, and it's where I mentioned saying that Colin Sexton was 85% of Donovan Mitchell start to come back to light, but I'm gonna ignore those for the time being.
I'm sorry. You know what? Like I'm gonna be a jerk right now, and I what's the best for Colin Sexton? Colin Sexton's playing 20 minutes a game and hasn't started a game for the Utah Jazz this year. That's just facts.
When you're right, you're right.
He's averaging 12.6 points a game. 12.6.
It's not great. It's not great, but. So the Mitchell thing is interesting, and I like I said, like you said, he was galvanizing last year, and then the comments after the Raptors game, it certainly felt, or the Blazers game, it's just like we'll figure it out, we'll be right, blah blah blah, like the same like player talk without saying like the the house is on fire and someone started the fire inside or whatever. But it's just weird because like it does feel like empty calories sometimes. Like he still gets his stats and his numbers. So like, yeah, an agent can make a pretty good argument when it comes to contract talks. If it's the Cavs or another team, if he ends up getting traded this summer. But I do wonder, like, is it similar to Garland in the fact that like everything is still kind of the same from when they lost to the Knicks last year? Like they're still struggling. They sometimes just don't show up, or they come out flat and a team punches them so hard that they don't know how to respond to it. And like Mitchell's going through the motions waiting for some type of change. Or is it more of a case of like, is he not fully healthy and he's trying to gut through it and trying to shake off the rust, and maybe something that we don't know because everyone's dealing with some type of ache and pain or injury at this point. But I don't know. It's just like Garland have been kind of really flat this year. Like I was really hoping that like, okay, they have a year under their belt. They're both going to leap and like really do some really fun stuff because they're comfortable with each other. Instead, it feels like the duo took a couple steps back and they're kind of figuring out how do we coexist on the floor together and how does that translate to winning ultimately.
I think that's a great one. I think where Mitchell is at and where this ends up is, I think overall something of a whole. Then mine is, I think, related to this. It's just the Cavs themselves. I still feel like we are waiting for them to tell us exactly what they are. We talked about this a lot on Monday's show. So if you want a little bit more in detail on this and kind of the vibe around this team right now, go back to our previous episode, check that out. But I think just with this team, Evan, with the net rating where it is, with the quality of play, the up and down play, the fact that there's a lot of games where they have to come back just to like get in games against what should be lesser teams, just it still feels like you're waiting for them to either say we are going to figure it out and get better, or we're just not, and it leaves them in kind of this weird in between place that is not fun for them to be in. And you know what? We're about to find out some more. We talked about this specifically, but Magic, the Heat, Celtics twice, the Magic again, Houston, like there are tough games coming down the sled for them. And we're going to learn something, good or bad, positive or negative, whatever it is. You're going to get some more clarity, I think, about this team over this next run of games and where they stand in the hierarchy of the East and in the NBA.
Adversity, no matter how you shake it, will give us a pretty good perspective on this. And we talked about this again a lot on Monday's show, but the Cavs are weirdly a better road team than they are a home team right now. But this is a tougher road trip. And JV was asked about this at practice on Tuesday or Monday rather, and he said like, yeah, it's just an opportunity for us to grow and learn what we are and who we are as a team, and we're going to take it on a game by game basis. And yeah, I just, like you said, I'm waiting for something to just kind of click for me where I'm like, okay, this is how this team flows, this is how this team functions. They have figured out their strengths, because it just feels like they keep constantly shuffling the chairs on the deck of the Titanic that's already sinking. Because I don't know. It's just like you could make like the comparison, like, oh yeah, the second LeBron era coasted through the regular season, but that team made the NBA Finals 4 years in a row. They won a championship. This Cavs team got punked by the Knicks in the first round. So like, they kind of have to put up or shut up, or we may have to start talking about like, okay, is Greg Buckner, Luke Walton, or even Dave Yeager the better option for the Cavs? Because they need some type of spark somewhere, and I don't think it's going to come from like a wholesale trade unless Mitchell demands a trade tomorrow saying like, all right, I'm out of here. But if things aren't great, usually the first one to go is the coach, and I wonder if that's the shot in the arm of the shock the Cavs need to kind of wake up. But it's just like they're asleep at the wheel right now.
Gonna end there. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Back at you tomorrow ahead of Cavs Magic. We'll dive into some numbers, what that team is, what to look for in that matchup. Talk to you then. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.